Absolute pleasure.
It's a pleasure.
Absolute pleasure.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Thank you for joining us on what's the program?
Parkinson.
Parkinson. Hi. Right, Tony. So tell me, I think what everybody wants to know really is where you've come from, and things to start off with. So with your background and a little bit about you.
Probably like a lot of people here, I come from a council estate background in Coventry actually, so everyone from a council estate knows about a rough upbringing, rough areas, this sort of stuff, and not having pocket money was a myth when I was a kid. If I didn't go out and make some money up, then I wouldn't have any, and so that's my sort of background. Yeah, a rough council estate background, but loved every minute of you have to be entrepreneurial, otherwise you're just not going to have anything. So they had great stuff. I mean, one example I give you that we used to go talking about going on, but we used to go around to houses. We had the inspiration for this idea. I have to tell you, this is just at school one day they were making lamps out of bottles. So you put shells on and stick the bottles on. Well, what we thought was, what a great excuse to go around the council estate asking people if they've got any bottles for a school project that we could get the deposit off. You probably won't even remember, but there used to be like a penny deposit on each bottle to make you take them back to recycle. And so we made money in that way. I'm just giving you an example.
So he was an entrepreneur from the beginning?
In a way, but there was no choice for a lot of people to, you had to do something.
Excellent. No, good point. And obviously, I know you obviously had some success, and obviously we'll come to that in a moment. But what have you had any failures along the way? Because I think it's easy to talk about your successes, but I think where people really connect is when you talk about your failures, the things that you haven't.
Yeah, probably the biggest, and failure is an emotive word, isn't it, as well? But the biggest challenge along the way was that I started a business in the mid-80s. I got a bit of an idea that I could set up a car accessory shop because I worked for a car accessory company, a city centre company. So me and a mate pulled all our money and just got it completely wrong. We did all the things you don't want to do. We got a lease, we got a shop in the wrong place. We spent every bit of money we had on stock. We just did it all wrong. You wouldn't have known we were there unless you actually drive into an estate. And what we didn't. Fortunately, we were fortunate we didn't go bankrupt, but we had to close eventually, and that was a tough lesson to learn.
How much, if you don't mind me asking, how much did you lose?
You're in the small thousands, really, But for us at the time, what you lose is more than just money. If you're not careful, you lose a job if you value that. You can lose a lot of things along the way, So you basically go back, when you're finished, you go back to the very beginning. But what it does is it shows you, that sense of freedom. I was talking to someone on the way here, and we were talking about once you've experienced that bit of freedom, you just want to do it. You know you can make it. You just want to do it again. But it was a big failure. We stopped. I went back to a job, and it took me about 2 years to realise that is definitely not the answer.
So when did you obviously you had that failure and things like that, when obviously you had the success, but when was the defining, I don't know, is there a defining moment where something just clicked, or where the world has changed for you, your perspective?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I can pin it down to actually years before the business failure, when I was 19, I think, 19 and a half, 20, and I was an apprentice at a factory, Dunlop as it happens, and that was a great job that was a great thing to be at the time. If you could get an apprenticeship, you were almost made. It was supposedly a job for life. But I remember one day, and this will go back to something I want to explain why I think I was like this, but at that age I was looking around the factory, and there was probably 2,000 or 3,000 people working there, and I could see my life before me, literally. I was talking to people who were 20, 25, 30, 45, 50, 60, coming up to retirement. There almost wasn't a single person there that wasn't saying, at some point I'm going to leave, or I'm not going to do this for the rest of my life. And so there I am, 19, 20, and I'm thinking, but you're still here. So if I don't do something, I made this decision. I know I don't want to know I don't know. Life is, for some people it's enough to have evenings and weekends to live your life. But for me, I didn't feel like that. So I knew that if I was my whole life was going to be that existence, I didn't want it. So I knew that I had to go, and that's what I did. I left, and you know, people said, you know, I was absolutely stupid. I had a great job. You know, I was supposedly an aerospace engineer. But why would I want to do that? I didn't want to do it. And so the defining moment in that way was, if you're in a situation where you don't want what you can see you're going to get, why are you doing it?
Yeah,
you know,
good point.
for me.
So how did you go from obviously then looking at someone's life and thinking, I don't want that, to then making the million? Because that's the thing that we all, you know, you talk to anyone, you know, I want to be a millionaire. I want to be a millionaire, and it's that trigger for everybody. But you actually did it, and that was one of the things that inspired me when we first met, that you were someone who did it. So how did you get from that, looking at those and thinking, I don't want that, to actually getting to the million?
I tell you what, I think to try and relate it, I try and draw an analogy that might be helpful. If you imagine, has anyone ever had imagine you've got a brand new computer. It's exactly what you want. And when I say that, imagine you as a person, that when your mind was perfectly clear about what you wanted in life. You had ambitions, you were lively, you were firm, you knew what you wanted. And try to imagine that is your brand new computer. Well, what happens is, over time, you know, you put programs in, you might get a virus, and in life what happens is you become a sum of the influences that you take in. If you read the news, the people you hang around with, I mean, and I hung around with some not necessarily good people, but you know, it's just a council estate. And all of a sudden you are not the person you should be. So what I'm saying is, try to get a place in your mind where you are exactly, you know, don't forget what you wanted out of life. And there's a point to this. The point is that at 19 I knew I wanted more out of life. I wanted things. But it's not easy, because at 19 and a half, 20, I left that place, and for a year I was lost. I did insurance door to door. There's nothing wrong with that. I was scared to death to knock on the door. There was me and a lad that used to do this in Coventry, and it was like, who would be the bravest to knock the door? And I did all sorts of different things. I'm telling you, it was a scary time, but you know what? What I knew at 20 was I had no responsibilities. I hadn't got a mortgage. I hadn't got big debts. Credit cards weren't around at the time. I knew that I only had to make a very small amount of money to live, which meant I could work my way through these challenges. But I tell you something, every time I got myself into a comfortable position, in theory a good job, I would say, somehow or another, I could look back at that time and say, you know, no, this is not what you wanted. So I probably took, you know, 3 steps forward, 5 steps back, and I probably did that 4 or 5 different times. So I always went back to what I'd call the default position, which is, I want to be a millionaire. I want to live my life. I want to have some freedom. So if I get what is a good job, I ended up in a quoted company, a large company. I was in the top 50 managers in the company. I was earning more at that time than anyone I knew in my type of person. And I left again. People were looking at me thinking, you are absolutely stupid, but I knew that that wasn't still what I wanted. So for me, it's like, why would you do that?
So there's a question, because obviously a lot of people, you know, I speak to, when we talk about success, the million, I gotta make money,
Yeah.
Was it the million, or was there something behind the million? I want a million to do this, or was it the status of being a millionaire, or what was it?
Well, I tell you what, you know, I mean, and I know you know some part of this answer as well, is that coming from a poor background, my mum and dad had never, they were always in rented accommodation, and rented accommodation sounds like American, don't it? Sorry about that. But they're in a rented house, and never had anything. And I remember that my dad's dream was to always live in a bungalow. And I know, and I don't want to get emotional, but you know, the truth is that, God, what could you do if you did get that kind of money? And I'm not saying, you know, I was very much, it was a family thing. You know, what can I do for my family? And I never really thought about it, but in that way. But here's the story. You know, I got to. I started a business, and I was talking to Christian about this, but at the right time, got luck, and you have to have a degree of luck. But I did go on to make, to the point where I sold this business in about 2000, 2001, and actually made $1 million. The doing it is, the message would have to be that I never gave up on what I wanted, because I had good jobs, I had bad jobs, I did this and I did that, you know, I would say also, don't sit and wait for it to come. You know, go out and do some volunteer work, or go out and, even if you're not making any money, go and do something. But
and you know, obviously, you know, the story, because you know, you hear, you know, if you, for my generation, you'll listen to MTV and you'll hear someone go, I really want to buy my house, you know, and things like that. That defining moment when you could actually give her the keys and give your dad the keys and say, well, you know what, that's the house. I remember you told me the story of where you had almost forgot the story of the house that you were going to buy, but your mum reminded you of a picture that you actually did.
Yeah, this is amazing.
I think that's
this is amazing, not because I'm amazing, but this is amazing because I think since that time, I have learned that most of the successful people that are out there, at some point or another, wrote down exactly what they wanted. And I'll tell you the story because I'd forgotten that I did this. Something was driving me from the very beginning, because at 19 and a half, I'm not saying I'm anything special, but for some reason I was the only person that actually made the decision. Actually, no, there's one other person who was laughed at, who made the decision to leave. Okay, what was driving me? When I was able to, you've got to imagine my mum and dad, picture this, right? We all know rough areas, okay? Yeah. My mum and dad were living in a ground floor flat in a block, a little block of flats where you've got, you know, stairs going up and then facing flats. You know, it's like a little block. Yeah. My mum comes from an age where you leave the door open. You know, we were forever telling her to lock the door because it's not a nice area. And one day she had some lads open the door and run through the house, and my dad, you know, trying to stand up for himself. Awful environment. But she didn't. My mum and dad didn't even want to leave there. You know how hard it was to get them to leave their environment. But what happened was fantastic. I mean, it was I've got 4 sisters. And my sisters went out with my mum and my dad to try and find you know, somewhere that they wanted to live in. Anyway, eventually found this bungalow. You know, my mum's there now, my dad's passed away, but for my dad, 5, 6, 7 years, unfortunately not longer, of living, you know, in a place where they're not under any threat like that. It's a lovely area. You know, they've got a garden out the back for the kids to play in, which in a flat you haven't got, and I just try and describe that to you as much as I can. But my mum had said to me, she says, you might not remember this, and she pulled out this piece of paper. You know, she saved everything from when we were kids, absolutely everything. She pulled out this thing, and on it said, one day I'm going to be a millionaire, I'm going to buy you and your dad a bungalow. You know, I'm going to buy you and dad a bungalow. And there it was, black and white, with a drawing. Excellent. Do you know what? Now, the point of that is, how crazy is that? Do you know what, though? I have to say, compose myself, and you can edit it later, can't you? But the point of it is almost you get what you ask for. If you don't ask, you don't get. And I got exactly what I asked for. Yeah. So when someone says to me now, one of my daughter's friends said to me, you know, I don't know what to do, and I want this and I want that, and I made her write down what she wanted. As big as that was, you know, I don't know if she'll get there. I hope she does. But one thing that I think, because of my personal experiences, I wrote it down and it happened.
Excellent. So what kind of things, obviously, you know, because the one thing is not many people, you know, I was truly blessed, and I do say that, and not just because obviously we're talking now, to be able to meet you, because you were one of the people that started me thinking, I don't want a career, and I want to think bigger. And I remember coming to your house and you had the pheasants, you had the horses, and I was like, this is the life I want, you know. He picks up his kids, I want to do that, you know. But the one thing I liked about it, and this is not to, it sounds really, I'm not trying to demean you now, but I could relate to you, you know. And sometimes people feel that, you know, super successful people are got to be like this or got to be like that and things like that. But what would you say to all those people who have a dream, like, you know, many people who probably watch this video and things like that, that you need to do, or what are the traits that you need to follow, or, you know, what advice would you give to, you know, for those people who have a dream like you, maybe, you know, I want to buy them on my house, or they want to, you know, move from a certain area, or live a certain lifestyle, or whatever it may be. What would you say? What would be your advice to someone who is, you know, can relate to them coming from an inner city area and making it?
Do you know, probably the biggest single thing is that, and it wasn't what I thought I would say, but as we've discussed this now, probably the thing I'd say more than anything else is that I was able to take chances because I lived within my means. to be honest with you, if I was to start again now, it may go against the grain for some people, but I would not have a mortgage. I would not be owing money to anybody. And the reason I say that is because if you only need 150 quid or 200 quid a week to live on, if you can do it, you are a free person. Because the minute that you're shackled with debt, you're stuck. You have to service that debt or get out of debt somehow. So I would say, and I know we spoke about this, and it brings it home a little bit, because if you want to living a free life is what it's all about. Being able to take, not take chances. When I talk to someone about starting a business, really, please, don't do it on the cheap. Start cheap, because the minute that you take out a big lease, or the minute that I'll give you an example. I'm not trying to show off here. 9 years into the business that we were successful at, I had £400,000 in the bank, owned the property, and completely debt free, and I was driving around in an E-Reg Maestro van, right? And the only time I bought myself an even half decent car was when I sold the business and the money was actually in the bank. Because I kept a cushion all the time, because I never didn't want to lose it. But the thing is, you've got to be light on your feet. You haven't made it till you've made it. So don't act like you've made it, and don't spend money like you've made it, because it will just destroy you. It will destroy you. That's
good. No, and obviously, thanks for your time. One thing I want to do is, obviously, there's a lot of people who've got dreams here. So I don't know if anybody's got a question that potentially you may want to ask. You know what I mean? It's a great time to ask it now, because obviously he's just someone who's done it, who's earned the million. For me, one of my dreams is that I want to spend time with my kids. I want to have that time freedom, and he's got it. A lot of people talk about it, but he's got it. So, is there any questions that anybody wants to ask?
I'd like to make a comment, if I may.
You can make it.
That any young single men that are here at the moment should realise they have a major advantage in terms of getting on in life. And I think a lot of young men at the moment feel that they can't have aspirations and they can't get on, and their environment holds them back. But they're in the best position, aren't they, for the reasons you just gave?
Good point. Angelina, you had a...
Obviously, we all know what kind of lifestyle we want. We all want to be debt-free, we want to go to pick up our kids from school. I want a nice car, I want me to have a pony, I want, and we all know it takes money to have that lifestyle, but how do you know? I know what lifestyle I want, but at the moment I'm struggling knowing how I'm going to achieve this lifestyle. Like, we've all got skills in certain areas, it's just knowing how to use those skills, and what do I do with the skills I've got to get me to where I am. So how did you know what you was going to do to make you a millionaire?
Truth is, I didn't, to be honest with you, Angelina. What I did was that I didn't accept mediocrity. So I'd say to somebody to try to answer your question, and I really would like to answer this question if I can, is that whatever situation you find yourself in, for something to change, you have to change. We all have to take personal responsibility for the change. And do you know what? If you can't seem to, well, you're here for that's a fantastic thing, because what you're doing is you're getting out of your comfort zone to do something, to try to find out what the answers are. But if it was me, you can duplicate. I'd ask you a question. What is it that you're passionate about? That if you could be doing it for a living and make a lot of money, would you?
Personal shopping.
Sorry.
Awesome, man.
I love shopping. And it's not the spending the money. It's finding the item. I could find a pair of shoes and say, I care for you. And then you come home and you put your outfit together and you're like, wow, I've spent 10 hours and thought, you know what, that was the best 10 hours. But my friends can say, and I need an outfit for X, Y, and Z. Will you come shopping? I'm like, yeah. I don't even have to spend my own money. I can be spending someone else's money to pleasure them. I'm like, yeah. Like, I'm doing my living room, I'll come with you. Like, we need to go to X, Y, and Z. And I can set out a plan. I know what your living room's going to look like. I know how it's going to make you feel. And I know where we can get it from.
Awesome.
So,
and it is a job in its own right, though.
Yeah,
Well, I personally, do you know what I would do? This very minute, if I was you, and you probably looked a little bit, but I would make connections with people somehow. I would make connections on the internet. I would try and find people that have a similar ideas to yourself and similar passions. But I absolutely wouldn't be afraid to go and find someone who's successful. I bet you somebody does that for a living. I bet they do. I don't know anybody.
Yeah, they do.
Find that person and go and talk to them, Angelina. Because today, yeah, go and talk to them, and they'll talk to you. Do you know the one thing about people, not just successful people, if you ask them a question, people love to tell you. I mean, they do, honestly, don't they? You've experienced that as well. So
many times.
go and find some. Go and find some successful people in your field. Do you know? Have you heard of Philip Green?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Debenhams, hugely successful. I sent an email to Philip Green to ask him a question once. I can't even remember what it was to do with Excel, and he actually came back and answered the question. Philip Green, billionaire.
That's it.
I'm just telling you that it does that. And I almost don't want to be flippant about the answer I'm giving you, but you literally could go online and find people look for personal shoppers, type it in Google, and then once you find a blog or something, you go and contact them. But I'll talk to you more about it if you like, Angelina, because that's what I would do, I have to be honest.
But that's all we've got time for.
Pleasure.
Well, thank you very much. Big round of applause. Thank you very much for that. Excellent. Hope you all enjoyed that. And